What is this? What the... Daring Do is real now? Rainbow Dash is just... Ugh! Okay, calm down. Calm down. Let's start from the top. First off, I like the way Rainbow is counting the days till the next Daring Do book. It reminds me a lot of what I was like when I was waiting for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix to come out. I literally counted every single day from about 100 onwards. I can also relate to Rainbow going around getting excited about something most people in her life either don't care or don't even know about. It's annoying for me how few people in my actual life watch Doctor Who. Thank God I have the internet. Wow, Pinky is acting particularly random and over the top here. Kind of odd considering this is a Rainbow episode. Oh, now it all makes sense. Yep, it's Dave Polsky again. That guy just seems obsessed with writing random Pinky stuff, as well as comedy in general. He seems to have a fairly good understanding of the characters, but he often has them acting illogically. This party is Polsky's typical comedy for the sake of comedy routine, with the party serving no purpose outside of it just being a joke. With that said, I like this subtle Pinky moment where she puts a party hat on Rainbow, and Rainbow doesn't even say anything. It's like they've been completely desensitized to Pinky's antics by now. But this joke with Pinky drawing a red line on the ground is pretty stupid. It doesn't even make much sense. I know Pinky can be random, but there's normally at least some sort of reason to why she does things. Is it supposed to be one of those deceiving the audience type jokes? If it is, it's not done very well, because that was quite obviously a map we were looking at before. So the line she's drawing on the ground couldn't possibly be the same line. You want to do a deceiving the audience type joke? How about this? The camera pans out from the map with Pinky drawing a red line on it. Then Twilight comes over and says, "Pinky, stop drawing on the map!" Then looks at it and says, "Okay, I think we're about here," and points somewhere on the map that is nowhere near the red line. We think the line is showing where they are, but in fact it was just Pinky drawing. Typical Polsky is very hit and miss with his Pinky stuff. I like the way Twilight says that she'll find the address somehow, because I think that is a legitimate question. In a world without internet, how does she plan to find it? The dialogue when AK Yearling arrives back at her house, however, is one of the few minor things that bugged me.
We didn't do this! We swear!
She didn't say you did, Twilight.
What have you done to my house?
Oh, now she says it, after Twilight has already told her that they didn't do it. They should have switched those two lines around. Applejack then proceeds to say the exact same thing Twilight just said.
We didn't do this, Miss Yearling.
Also, why does this ring sort of float out of the book when Yearling opens it? And how come in the next shot it's grown in size by like 4 times? The first act of this episode takes you down a very different kind of path from what the story actually ends up being. The way Rainbow talks about how she wants AK Yearling to finish the book as fast as possible, almost to the point of harassing her, got me to believing she was going to end up forcing Yearling to rush out the book much quicker than she wanted to. Then when Rainbow reads it, it ends up sucking, and the lesson might be how it's important to let people take their time with their work to make sure it's as good as they can possibly make it. Instead, we get what I do have to admit is a pretty unexpected twist. Even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, Daring Do is real, and all the events in the books really happened. I'm kind of in two minds about this. On the one hand, it does make the idea of telling a Daring Do story in an episode a lot more interesting. It would have been pretty boring watching a Daring Do adventure if it had just been a book Rainbow was reading, because there wouldn't actually have been anything at stake. It also enables the main 6 to get involved in the adventure, which again makes it a lot more interesting. When you watch My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, you want a story about the main cast of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, not a story about Daring Do. On the other hand, this opens up a lot of questions. Are you seriously telling me none of the readers of the books ever knew that it was all real? All these stories seem to have happened over quite a large area in a lot of different places and involving a lot of different people. Or ponies. And no one who read the books ever came across this or met any pony involved in any of this? And why has Daring decided to write about her adventures under a pen name and pass it off as fiction? If you were some kind of courageous heroine that saved Equestria many times, wouldn't you want proper credit for what you'd done? I understand living under the alias AK Yearling. That's like her Clark Kent. But even Superman doesn't try to pretend everything he did was just a work of fiction. What's the point? How could you even do that? He'd have to be wiping everyone's memory constantly. It also makes the need to understand Daring Do's character a lot more important. It's clear that Rainbow understands her, having read the books, but we the audience don't really know enough about her. Before, when she was just a character Rainbow knew about, it didn't really matter that we didn't know much about her because she was just a work of fiction. All that mattered was that we knew Rainbow understood her. But now that she's a character that exists in the context of the show, it becomes more important that we understand who she is as a character. we need to know what Rainbow knows about her. Like, is this character trait of her wanting to work alone typical of her? Now, I do have to admit, the part where Twilight and Rainbow are completely nerding out on Daring Do was frickin' awesome. It's also something I can completely relate to as a big Harry Potter, Zelda, and Doctor Who nerd myself. The dialogue is exactly the kind of stuff you hear from obsessed fans of anything. I can tell Polsky put a lot of thought into writing this part. I also like another bit of subtle Pinky comedy with her nodding while they talk, pretending she has any idea what they're talking about. Now to what is quite possibly the worst part of the episode. Rainbow starts acting like an idiot. She goes to try and help Daring, but instead of doing anything useful, like flying ahead to see where they need to go, she starts acting like an obsessed fan. Daring says she can't trust her. Why doesn't Rainbow tell her about things she's done in the books to prove that she's read them? Wouldn't that help gain her trust? Later on, Daring is fighting a bunch of cats, which is certainly something Rainbow could have helped her with. Instead, Rainbow decides to just throw her her hat. Huh? What? Why? Is she just thinking about how it saved her at the end of the quest for the Sapphire Stone, maybe? Well, this is nothing like the same kind of situation, so how is it going to help her? So then we have Twilight doing a sudden 180 from her last scene by claiming Rainbow has been putting Daring on a pedestal. But to me it seems more like Rainbow has lowered her own self-esteem. She's not looking up at Daring on a pedestal, she's looking up at her from a hole in the ground. Also, the fact that this Daring Do story is quote-unquote real makes all the cliched elements like the forced exposition, the way the villain explains his plan to the heroine, and the way he just leaves her to die rather than actually killing her, a lot more annoying to me. In Read It and Weep, I kind of assumed that the cliched nature of the story was kind of a joke. It was a parody of all those adventure stories from the 30s. But now that it's happening in the same world as the show, I kind of just expect something a bit better. I also find it weird that Daring knows what removing those rings from that tower will do, but doesn't know how heavy they are. If she's had this as her plan all along, wouldn't she have thought to find out something like that? Also odd how the ring appears to be much lighter in the next scene. I didn't really like the journal at the end. It didn't really feel all that different from the letters, and this is yet another one of the growing number of episodes where we didn't really need a moral, but they still feel the need to force one in there. Also, why is Rainbow getting the new book only a week early? I thought it was still like 5 months away. Overall, I actually was anticipating not liking this episode, simply because it was Polsky and because I'm not really all that interested in Daring Do. Thankfully, there wasn't nearly as much of the Pinky acting stupid stuff as other Polsky outings, and what there was worked okay aside from one rather stupid moment. But I still can't get my head around the idea that Daring Do is real. It just creates far too many problems for me. I've already heard from a lot of people that it's just one of those things you just need to accept and move on. But I've been trying to do that ever since I first saw the episode, and I just can't get past it. There is also the fact that for large parts of the story, Rainbow acts rather stupid, and the other 5 are basically spectators. In fact, Applejack and Rarity don't appear to do anything other than say the odd line. I also really don't care for the Daring Do story we have in this. I didn't mind it too much in Read It and Weep, because all that really mattered was that Rainbow liked it. But with it being real here, the fact that it bored me made the episode as a whole far less interesting. Now don't get me wrong, I don't hate this episode. A lot of the comedy and action in this episode is quite enjoyable. The nerding out bit had me laughing for a good minute or so. I actually had to stop the video and watch it again, I liked it so much. There is plenty of good stuff here, but Daring Do being real is just way too big a problem for me.